I've been so broke my whole life because of this sport.
I'm broke, so I need to fight.
My whole fight purse was gone. Show and win.
I'm asking for a bigger revenue share of what we bring in.
The UFC has a fighter pay problem, and it's getting out of hand, to the point where the company might be in jeopardy of losing reign as the most dominant organization in MMA. MMA is one of the fastest growing sports in the world, and the mecca is quite obviously the UFC. That being said, the average pay of a UFC fighter is about $138,000, putting them 9th on the top 10 paying sports list in the world. This is a drastic difference from the next highest paying sport and 8th on the list, which is golf, and pays about $630,000 yearly on average. And I love golf and all, but for somebody to be hitting a ball into a hole with a stick, getting paid 5 times more than these fighters, something seems totally off. But if you dig deeper, you'll find that this average is massively unbalanced because of fighters like Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, and of course Conor McGregor, the highest paid athlete in the world. He made $180 million in 2020, but only $22 million of this came from the UFC, and the other $158 million came from his other businesses, like the whiskey business where he uses elite entrepreneur sales tactics. If you look at the other athletes topping this list, their incomes come directly from their clubs and teams who pay them massive contracts and bonuses for competing. Take Lionel Messi, who made 75% of his earnings from his club, Cristiano Ronaldo, who made 58% from his club, Dak Prescott, who made 98% from the Dallas Cowboys, and even LeBron James, who worked on Space Jam and all that other bullshit that came with it. And made 32% of his income from the Lakers. McGregor picked up a measly 12% of his income from the UFC, which I think at this point just makes him a whiskey salesman and nothing else. Other UFC fighters like Cole Williams, for example, made only $9,500 in 2020. And the majority of the people on the roster are making closer to that amount of money than they are to the McGregor and the Nate Diaz levels. To make matters worse, the cost of being a top-level MMA athlete is much higher than most other sports. Think about it, they independently prepare all of their camps with their food, medical costs, their training, etc. As opposed to other leagues where most of that is covered by the team. If you play in the NHL, the only way to get on the ice is with your team in their jersey, in their rink, with their coaches and trainers, and they take you around at no travel expense, from rink to rink across North America for all of the games, feeding you and providing you with whatever therapeutic and medical recovery things that you need. In MMA, however, all of that is on you to cover out of pocket. To use an example, Petr Yan made $230,000 in 2020. This amount is immediately cut by 30 to 70% for coaching and management fees. Additionally, there's the cost of equipment and training throughout camp, nutritional needs, medical needs, travel costs, which are largely covered for players in other pro sports, but they're not in the UFC. Yan is also a crazy example because he's literally fighting at the top of the sport for the top prize, which is the UFC championship belt, meaning that he has to travel the world bringing his coaches with him with all of those expensive costs and live the strict, expensive lifestyle of a pro elite athlete. With that level of income, Yan would have earned no more than around $70,000 by my calculations for the year of 2020, where he won the championship belt. So that means for UFC fighters who are arguably sacrificing more physically than any other sport, they're compensated much worse. In fact, the UFC only pays fighters about 16% of the revenue earned compared to other major sports organizations like the MLB, NBA, NFL, and even smaller fight promotions like Bellator, who pay nearly half of all revenue to the actual fighters, as it should be. Nobody's tuning into the UFC to look at the angry pink man.
Sushi somewhere. Sushi's from Japan. He's from the Philippines, dummy.
Or listen to the funny ape man. We do it because we love watching two people locked in a cage with a piece of 2-inch leather strapped to their hands, trying to kill each other with nothing more than their bodies. Miesha Tate just recently came out of retirement, and in an interview after that fight, she told the reporters that fighting is just barely covering the bills. She came out with a clean TKO victory in the 3rd round against Marion Renault, but later said that 98% of her earnings from that fight went directly to the training costs.
My whole fight purse was gone. Show and win for this fight. I didn't make it. I don't.
Serious?
I at least spent. I had to be about 98% at least. So maybe I walked away with a little bit. But I have 200,000. Yeah, I'm just lucky I made a bonus. To be honest, I'm serious. That's how much it costs, because you take taxes off the top. 70% of my fight purse is gone immediately, right off the top. So I have 30% to work with, and that 30% I take to buy my organic foods, to get my whatever training gear, heart rate monitors, whatever other things.
Luckily for her, she's a bigger draw in the sport and was able to come out of that fight with about a $200,000 payout. She goes on to estimate that she came out of that fight with about $4,000. And if you think that's bad, it just gets uglier the deeper you go down the roster. For smaller profile fighters like Cheyenne Buys, she recently got a first round knockout finish, earning her a performance of the night bonus and $50,000 extra. Her reaction really says it all.
You got performance of the night.
Get that bonus. I've been so broke my whole life because of this sport, but it's so worth it to me because I love this sport. But to get a $50,000 paycheck, you know.
Fighters, of course, get paid a purse broken down by the show money, the win money, and have a chance to earn a bonus for a great performance or stoppage. But relying on the need to be one of the few fighters picked for the performance bonus or the knockout bonus is just not reliable at all. You can't assume you're going to be one of those people getting a bonus on a big card, and it leaves fighters in a stressful place, not knowing about how much they're going to earn for a fight. Sarah Alpar, a new UFC fighter to the roster, was struggling to pay her training costs for an upcoming UFC fight. She was not getting sponsorship interest and had to rely on her side job at Starbucks to stay afloat. As a last-ditch effort before needing to give up on this dream, she started a GoFundMe page to bring in some cash, and luckily this worked, for now. Obviously, this is not a sustainable revenue stream, and to me it's just a sad situation overall. For someone that achieved the pinnacle of the sport, making it to the UFC, to have to rely on side gigs, and to be desperate for money just to be able to train and not focus full-time on the sport, just seems like something is wrong. Most fighters financially have no other choice but to accept all fights offered to them, no matter who the opponent, when, where, or how they're feeling. Like Jared Cannonier in his main event win against Kelvin Gastelum this last weekend. As a number 3 ranked guy in the UFC middleweight division, Cannonier should not have the outlook to accept any fight just to get a payday at this point in his career. He's earned the right as number 3 of the top 15 to be choosy and pick the right guy for his next fight based on a lot of different factors. But as he said,
do you anticipate fighting again or kind of waiting to see what happens in that title fight?
I'm broke, so I need to fight. Hopefully, I get that title shot.
And he desperately needs to take more fights just to bring in more income. Fighters like John Jones, Jorge Masvidal, and Nate Diaz have candidly been turning down fights lately, complaining that the payday is simply not good enough for them to be excited.
It's not that I'm asking for more money. It's I'm asking for a bigger revenue share of what we bring in.
This is fair for guys who have leveraged their names from their UFC fame to make brand deals and get paid outside of the sport. For them, they're financially healthy enough to not take the risk of putting their bodies on the line for fights that do nothing for their career. But this is starting to happen more and more, and we're even starting to see it with active champions who don't want to defend their belts. Pretty soon, fighters may start to look elsewhere to get a fair shake in the MMA world. History has shown us that when the world is imploding, we look to the greatest leaders of our time for wisdom and for help. In this situation, there's only one man that's speaking the truth to really guide us through and save the UFC. Yep, I'm talking about Jake Paul.